All right, let's dive right into this. We're looking at a raw, first-person account from an immigrant's memoir about just trying to survive in London. And this is not your typical story about finding a job. No, this is about what happens when your entire world just completely falls apart and you've got to improvise just to keep your head above water.
I mean, just try to imagine that for a second. Your roommates, your friends, they're suddenly gone, deported, and you're the one left standing in this big, empty house with a huge rent bill coming due. You're undocumented, and you are completely, totally alone. That one sentence, wow, it just sets the stage for this incredible story of desperation.
So, how on earth did our protagonist get into this mess? You have to understand, this wasn't some kind of career choice. It was a crisis that just landed right on top of him, forcing him to either figure something out fast or end up on the street.
And the sheer scale of the problem was just massive. £900 a month for rent, that's a staggering amount of money for anyone. But for an undocumented immigrant who just lost his entire support system, it's basically impossible. And to make it all worse, he had this sinking feeling that his last roommate might have given their address to the police just to get himself out of trouble, a total betrayal.
So what do? With absolutely no other options, his back is completely against the wall. He has to step into this new, totally unplanned role. He's not just a guy living in a house anymore. He's about to become a landlord. You know, there's no online listing, no fancy app, no contract. His big plan was just a desperate, low-tech gamble. A little piece of paper, handwritten, and taped up in a local shop. That simple ad was like a beacon, sending out a signal into this hidden world of London's undocumented community. And it was about to turn his quiet house into, well, a hub of chaos.
And you won't believe his very first experience as a landlord. A guy shows up, seems interested, pays a tiny £20 deposit, and then just vanishes. Poof, gone, never seen again. It was a super bizarre start for sure, but that 20 quid, that was a small but absolutely crucial win. It was proof that this crazy idea, it might actually work.
So right away, this experience taught him a huge lesson. He realized that asking for any kind of official ID, like a passport, was just a non-starter. Look, in this world, everyone is vulnerable. Asking for papers would just scare people away, and frankly, he couldn't afford to be picky. It was a risk for him, and it was a risk for them. So with his new no questions asked policy in place, the house started to fill up pretty quickly. It became home to this amazing cast of unforgettable characters, every single one of them with their own story of survival. First up, you get Pan Janek and Pani Maria. This older Polish couple, they took being frugal to a whole new level. Our guy would just watch, totally amazed, as they'd come back from the grocery store with a single potato, an onion, and 1 carrot. It's kind of wild to think about in a world where we all buy in bulk.
Then you had Sasha from Estonia. His life was pretty straightforward, really. It seemed to revolve around just 2 things. His job, cleaning the streets with one of those litter picker things, and the can of cider that was basically always in his hand. He was just this quiet, steady guy in the house, just going about his routine.
And then came the tenant who was going to bring this whole fragile situation to a boiling point. A Bulgarian guy, a courier with a super fast motorcycle. He seemed professional, reliable, at first, but oh boy, he was about to show a much, much darker side.
So picture this, the house is finally full. The rent money is covered. He can maybe, just maybe, breathe a little easier, right? Wrong. A serious threat pops up from inside the house, and the fragile piece he'd managed to build was about to be completely shattered.
I mean, what could possibly go wrong? Well, turns out, pretty much everything. When you have a whole house full of undocumented people, the stability is built on shared secrecy. It's like a house of cards. Everyone has so much to lose, which makes them a team, but it also makes them incredibly vulnerable if someone decides to betray that trust.
And there it is, the ultimate threat. The Bulgarian tenant decides he doesn't want the room anymore and uses their shared vulnerability as a weapon. He wants his money back, and he's not afraid to blackmail everyone in the house to get it. One phone call to the police and all of their lives are just over.
So now he is completely trapped. He's got the blackmailer on one side threatening him, and on the other, his own tenants are terrified of being deported, and they're blaming him for bringing this danger into their home. The very people he was trying to protect are now turning on him. It's a nightmare. I mean, what else could he do? His only real choice was to de-escalate the whole thing. He gave the guy his money back, taking the financial hit himself,
It was just a painful lesson in the high-stakes game he was playing. Sometimes protecting the group means you have to sacrifice your own skin.
But here's the thing. This story doesn't end in defeat. Not at all. This whole experience seems to just solidify his resolve. In his very last month as a landlord, our guy makes this surprising and, honestly, deeply honorable choice that shows you who he really is.
Okay, so the key to his final move lies in how the money worked. The last month was what they called deposit month. Basically, everyone had already paid that month's rent up front when they moved in. This meant that any cash he collected from them during this final month was pure profit.
Now, he could have just pocketed all that cash and disappeared. I mean, who would blame him? But that's not what he does. He saw this whole thing as a shared business, even though his partner was long gone. So he comes up with this really clear plan to end his short landlord career with a real sense of fairness.
50%. He chooses to split the profit from that final month right down the middle with his friend Yurii, the guy who started this whole thing with him before he got deported. He absolutely could have kept it all. No one would have ever known. But he just didn't.
And this was his reasoning. It's so simple, but so powerful. It was just an act of loyalty to a friend who had lost everything. It just goes to show that even when you're pushed to the absolute limit, your integrity can stay intact. It really wasn't about the money for him. It was about doing the right thing.
And that really is the question this whole story leaves you with, isn't it? When you are just trying to survive day to day, are you still bound by these ideas of honor and fairness? Well, the story of this accidental landlord seems to suggest that the answer is yes, and that ultimately those are the choices that really define who we are, no matter what our circumstances might be.